You are listening to the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast, where you discover management insights and strategies for your successful dental practice. There are also interviews with key people in the industry who have advice and services to help you and your team achieve great success. Welcome to this episode of the Julie Parker Practice Success Podcast. And the guest that I have for you today, I'm really excited about. I've been an admirer of Michelle Taylor of Marketing Practices. I'm at the sidelines. I have participated as an attendee into one of their fantastic week-long presentations, or I should say, like workshops, if you like. And I've always really admired the amount of information and knowledge that she's got and her presenting abilities too. You've always been fantastic, Michelle. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate your time today, and it's great to be talking to your audience.
Fantastic. Now, you are considered a marketing coach and you're the founder of Marketing Practices. Can you just give our listeners a bit of a sense of who you are, what has led you to this space?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working in marketing for my entire career, nearly 25 years, which is insane. I don't know where all that time has gone. And I guess for the first half of my career, I worked for a lot of multinationals, managing multi-million-dollar brands that were household names, and then I had children, and it was a lot more difficult to work for those big companies and in those higher demanding roles. So I decided that it was time to go out on my own, and during that time I had quite a few dentists, doctors asking me about help with marketing. So I started to give them that help and coaching and consulting. And I've been doing that for probably the last 13 or 14 years. So I feel like it's my area of expertise, and I love it in terms of just being able to help people that help the local community.
That's great. I just had to close my door. I didn't realise there was going to be dogs barking and birds twittering at my end. And how do you find working with the dental industry? I mean, I remember when I agree with you, time just flies. And when I first entered the dental space, there was no marketing or promotion. You just set up shop and you became successful. But certainly there is the marketing space, and particularly I want to talk to you about the social media marketing space. These are all areas that I get a sense that a lot of dental practices are tackling, doing their best on their own with their own research. But to be successful in that space, you really do need to have quite specialised expert training in it. How have you found over these last years that you've been working in the dental industry, how have you found dental practice awareness and success in those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that social media in particular and marketing has evolved a lot in the last maybe 10 years. When I first kind of started out, we were just focusing on websites, and you'd make a great website. It was pretty static. It didn't do much. But that was basically your main thing that was online. And I would say within the last maybe 3 to 5 years, there has been a massive shift towards social media because the millennial age group are now turning 40. So they are the ones that have grown up. It makes us feel really old, doesn't it? I'm a Gen X.
Same here.
It's one of those things that they grew up with technology. So they have had instant access to information forever, and they are also shaping the way that our boomers and the older generations are also using technology and using social media particularly to find out information. So it has changed rapidly. The social media platforms, they are constantly changing. I have a program where I am literally updating those videos all the time because buttons are moving and new functionality happens and the algorithms are changing. the way that these platforms are showing information to people is constantly changing, and you need to be on top of that, which is a really difficult thing to do when you're a dentist and you run your own business and you also, are treating patients full time. So I would have to say, though, dentists are, very forward thinking in that regard, which is great. But anyone who doesn't have a social media strategy in place is going to be left behind very soon, if not, it already has happened. So, for example, a millennial would be scrolling through social media. They'll check you out if they've seen you somewhere else. If you haven't posted in a couple of months, they're going to anticipate that your practice doesn't exist, then you're not opened anymore, and also that you're just ignoring them in platforms that they want to consume that information. So you kind of don't exist to them. So it is super important to use these free communication channels to be able to get the message out there and establish yourself as that healthcare leader that you are within your local community. So it's super important. And, some practices embrace social media. And I've also had conversations with dental practice owners that they say, I hate social media. I think it's the downfall of society. Convince me why I need to use it for my practice. So there is a whole range of different opinions and ideas about social media in that regard. And you don't really have to use social media personally to be successful at it with your practice in that regard. So, yeah.
I imagine that's they're two separate issues. Whether you agree with social media or like it or enjoy its influence or not, that's one issue. A quite separate issue is not in your personal life, but in your business life. Does it make sense for your dental practice to start adopting social media? And when we compare a website, because we're all very familiar with websites, and a social media page, for example, a Facebook page for your practice, where do both of them sit within a marketing strategy?
Yeah, so I think the website still has a really important place. It's where we can do online bookings, although we can do that from our social media profiles as well. But really, websites are there for search. And when people go into Google and they are looking for a dentist in their local suburb, they can Google dentist, the best dentist in a certain suburb and get a list of all of those practices that they can then go and browse through to see, what your practice is doing. So people are going to find you by searching. They have that intention that they are looking for a dentist or whitening or Invisalign or all of those kind of services. They're actually going to Google to search for that with that intention. And the difference between your website and social media is that in social media, people are going to social media to be social. So they're not necessarily going to social media to, find out the list of services that you offer from your practice. They're going to social media for those social reasons. And we need to be aware that our posts are interrupting their social media experience with what we are trying to get those messages out there to them. So the information that we need to post needs to be different. It needs to be a lot more social and a lot less media-like. We don't want to be coming across as advertising on social media when we're using it organically. We want to use it in a relationship marketing sense. So you're using social media to help build relationships with that local community so that they can continue on their customer journey with you. And it might be that they're just going to reach out straight away. It might be that you're just going to warm them up and keep them in your warm audience for quite some time until there is some trigger that they go through where they are ready to take that next step to go and make that appointment with your practice. And consistency is absolutely the key to make sure that you are really consistent on social media so that you're catching people within their micro moments. So the website has its purpose, absolutely, and you need to have a website. But social media has a very different purpose in that we are essentially interrupting people within their micro moments to reach them and get those messages across to them and build relationships with them.
And I suppose that's where, you really tap into the word presence. They say social media presence. You need to be present all the time. And back before internet, when we had local newspaper advertising for our practices, all of the people who were selling those advertising spots would say you have to be in there every single week. It's not a matter of coming in once every quarter and thinking that's going to be enough. You need to be there every week in order for that local leader newspaper, for example, ad to be effective. And the same is true. And we can sometimes, I can imagine, feel frustrated at the amount of time and energy that we need to spend having this presence going on, because it does take time and energy to have people posting on a regular basis and thinking about what to post, how engaging they can be. But I often quote a book that I have been made aware of many, many years ago. It was a book called Successful Advertising, and it was written by a man, I think his name was Thomas Smith. I think I'm right there, Thomas Smith. And I've looked it up, the book you can still buy this book. But this book describes the number of impressions we need to make on someone before they take note and eventually then start questioning, maybe I should contact this person to see if they can help me. And the number of impressions is 20. And it goes from the first couple are ignored, you don't even see them. And then they start to notice you and see you. And then they start to get sick and tired of the repetitiveness of your message. And then they start to think, oh, maybe I am missing out. Maybe I'll ask friends and family if they've used this particular person or service or what have you, or product. And then eventually by the 20th impression, they might be considering actually contacting you. Now, this book was written in 1872. So we've always, as human beings, we have always required many, many impressions before we take any action on something, before we even see that person. But I think it's even worse, not worse now, I think it's even more difficult now because we are getting so many marketing messages on our social media platforms. And to actually break through that, we do need to have that strong presence there. Would you say every day? We need to have some sort of presence every day? What do you advise around that?
Yeah, look, you're right in that people definitely need to see you many, many times. And that comes down to relationships take time. Real life relationships take time. We're not going to meet somebody the first day and kind of, ask them to marry them, It takes time to build those relationships. And particularly in the world of social media, you are interrupting people where they may not have their full attention on what they're looking at. So that person might be, kind of on the sidelines of school sport, just flicking through for a quick mental break, but they're kind of, you're halfway there in terms of having their attention. It might be that they're cooking dinner and kind of flicking through, or many people watch TV, watch Netflix and flick on social media as well. So the reality is you don't have their attention all the time. And I heard a really interesting comment recently where somebody said, do you honestly think that the stuff that you are talking about is worthy enough of people to listen to you the first time? And the answer, unfortunately for all of us, is no. We keep needing that repetition. So it is super important to do that for sure. Now, in terms of being able to the consistency of how you need to be posting on social media, I wouldn't say necessarily every day. And if you're not doing anything right now, I would start with once a week. Just keep it consistent and do it once a week, because what we're doing is training the social media algorithms. They are a little bit like fitness in a way that if you stop for a couple of months, just like if you stopped your regular exercise regime, you're going to lose that fitness. So you're going to be starting back at square one every time you decide that, oh, we should post something on social media. So consistency is the key. And if consistency is once a week, then fantastic. Generally speaking, though, once you realize how many opportunities there are to showcase content, it actually becomes really easy to be able to be producing content, very regularly. And one of the biggest burdens or pain points that I know working with so many practice owners is that it is a burden. It's a time burden. But we need to, I guess, reset our mindset a little bit and think about the fact that social media is a direct channel of communication to you and your local community. And we've never had it this easy, ever. We've never had the technology available to be able to literally get instant messages out to our local audience in a very cost-effective way. It is only costing your time when we're using social media organically. So, that is something to consider. And what I would say to those people that feel like it is a time burden, when you plan your social media in advance, you can schedule it in advance using the schedulers on Facebook Creator Studio or Meta Business. So they are free scheduling apps that you don't have to pay additional money for, these kind of third-party apps that are available. When you pre-schedule stuff out, it doesn't matter if you have those busy weeks. You don't need to be going onto social media because your posts will be scheduled. And I highly encourage people to plan for it, bring it up in your team meetings, because if we can change our mindset in regards to social media, we can start to get some of our team members on board with this concept as well. Because I know a lot of practice owners will think, oh, my team's just they're not going to do that. Well, if we change the discussion a little bit and say to our team members, what are we getting asked about all the time? What problems can we solve in our practice that could be a communication problem that we can solve with effective communication through social media? So let's just say, for example, your practice is located in a bit of an obscure location. It's not necessarily street level, and you're finding that patients are running late because they just can't find you the first time. And, you kind of, it's just always this kind of common problem that comes up. And ask your team about these common problems. That is a communication issue that we can solve through social media. And I've seen practices get their mobile phone out and literally film, okay, there's the grocery store and this is where we are. You walk up these stairs and you go down the corridor and here we are. And when you post this information, people go, gosh, I didn't even know they were there. Okay, that's great. I know that. So what we're doing is we're changing the narrative here. We're not talking about social media as a burden. We're talking about how can we use social media to solve problems within our practice. And then you will have more of your team members kind of jumping on board and wanting to be a part of it.
I love that. That's just so tremendous. And I think that's another big bonus that we've got. We all do have cameras with us all the time, video cameras with us all the time, and it's so easy to create a video. And some practices may be thinking, gosh, it won't be a perfect video. It'll be a bit jumpy. There'll be background noise. I know that there was one of the videos that I saw, which I really liked. It was from an American dental practice, and you could hear the printer printing off the day sheets or whatever it is in the background. But they don't need to be perfect, do they?
They don't need to be perfect, and in fact, I would prefer them not being perfect. I read about a really interesting case study, and it's slightly off topic from dentistry, but there was a restaurant which had an amazing photographer that was taking these really polished images of the food, and what was happening is that people were kind of scrolling past these amazing images on social media because people have their advertising radar on, and the radar gets picked up by different cues really quickly. So they're scrolling past. So when the agency kind of realized this, they then went back and said to this photographer, okay, your photos are amazing, but we need them to be a little bit more authentic. We can't have them be so polished, because what happens on social media is that when you're scrolling through content, and don't get me wrong, Facebook are measuring everything. They're measuring whether you slow down over a certain post. So they are measuring 58,000 attributes of your usage behavior Okay.
Wow.
So there is nothing that
Scrutiny.
is coincidence when it comes to social media. But what happens is people will just, scroll past stuff that looks too advertising like. But if it looks really social like and authentic and real, that is where you get the connection. People connect with people. They don't connect with faceless brands. So if you are posting stuff that is beautifully designed in Canva, which I love, and it has a place, but if that is all your social media content is showing at the moment, and no real photos or real videos of you and your staff, you're just not going to get that connection. You bust through the social media algorithms and really kick things off when you are showing authentic content of your practice, your staff, the practice owners, etc. So yes, use your mobile phone. You don't need anything else, and get those authentic videos up particularly.
And it is that difference between educational, promotional type of posting as opposed to, as you say, relationship building. This is us. This is who we are. This is how we particularly help you. And to have the actual faces of the actual people in your practice is an enormous engager as opposed to just having stock photos, stock videos, and these beautifully designed posts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. I review social media accounts daily, and I can tell you that every single time a post gets good engagement, it always has people's faces, videos, etc. So yeah, it's you can go through anybody's social media account and you'll find that is absolutely the case. So it's one of those things, and I do get a lot of questions. Some people say, yeah, but I don't want to be posting about what I had for breakfast. Nobody cares, and I don't have time for any of that. And that is a fair comment, but what I say to people is actually, you set the filter that you want to portray to your target audience. And if your boundaries are that you don't want to show things about your personal life, and I certainly don't, I just make it a habit of, I've set boundaries. I don't show photos of my children on social media. I feel like, it's their choice to do that when they are old enough to understand what social media is and how that all works. And I also don't do things like, post images of my house or my the street that I live in or the suburb, those types of things. That's just something that I want to keep private. But I am a volunteer for Guide Dogs, and I post a lot of dog photos because people love dog photos, and all of those types of things. And I'm happy to share that part of who I am with people. So if you're listening thinking, gosh, I don't want to give all of myself to social media, you don't have to be successful at it. You set the filter, you set your boundaries of what you're comfortable with sharing, and just operate within those boundaries. But I will say this, one of the greatest tips is bring people along the journey with you. So if you're, celebrating something that's happened within your practice, people love seeing content like that. People want to celebrate with you. So, obviously birthdays and birth announcements of staff, those types of things, if they're having children, etc., are really good. But it might be giving people a little bit of an insight into what goes on in your dental practice. It might be showing people how we actually, sanitize the room every time that a patient's been in there, because some people don't think about the fact that is done. It might be that you are showing content because your team is updating their CPR training, for example, and patients want to know that, you guys are onto it and you've had that training, and that you care about your patients that much. So they are some examples of, bringing people into your world to bring them along this journey with you. And that's where you're going to build great relationships with people within the local community. Absolutely.
Beautiful. And I remember there was a practice I've got a feeling it was Tasmania. And I don't know how I came to be following them. I follow as many dental practices as I can. But they were going through a relocation and they were building a fresh practice that was going to be 2 stories and huge. And I started to see, so they were posting all these progressive photographs of, just bare land. And then all of a sudden it had the building and the second story went up and then the outside went up and etc. And I started just following them and seeking that practice page out just so I could see and be part of that journey. So I agree with you. You can become quite engaged with some of these stories. But if they hadn't posted regularly enough, I would have just forgotten about it because the information can become quite transient, especially when we're thinking about the fact that we're watching Netflix or cooking dinner while we're on social media. We've even given it even half attention. So even though it was transient before, it's even more transient now. So that regularity and frequency is important, isn't it?
It really is. And, I congratulate that practice for doing that and knowing to do that, because I work with a lot of aspiring practice owners, and that is certainly one of the strategies that we do. And I've seen practices have their practice owner has been out the front with all the fencing and signage and hoarding and stuff up while they're in construction and talking to the local community about what their hopes and dreams are and their vision for these new practices. And I've seen those posts go viral just by doing those posts that are helping people just get to know what's going on. And it is a really important strategy. And I've had many practices that are opening using that strategy have had hundreds of people on a wait list waiting for that practice to open. So imagine that if you're opening a new practice with no patients, and then all of a sudden you've got, my record's 463. So I'm happy to work with anyone who wants to beat that record. I'm working on it. Imagine that. Imagine opening a new practice and having 463 patients on a wait list ready for you to open. So it is absolutely possible.
That is powerful.
And that's all done through organic social media. That's just using good strategies, some good tactics and techniques to get people interested and excited about what you're about to create. So yeah, it's definitely possible.
And we're always talking about points of difference, and social media is a magnificent way of saying this is how we are different from all the practices around us. There's a practice here in Melbourne, and I won't state the name of it, but people may know the one I'm talking about, even though they'd probably be quite happy for me to state the name of it. But they are in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, and they have a very core value of being environmentally sound. And so they have won many awards. They have different ways of processing their waste and the chemicals that they use, and how the use of their external gardens as well, and what they're growing in the external gardens. And all of their posts, not all of their posts, a lot of their posts, they are utilising them as a way of saying this is our point of difference and this is what we're known for. This is a core value of ours. And so it can really help identify your practice as well, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And when you think about it, there's thousands of dental practices, in Australia. In the major cities, you've got a dental practice in very close proximity to one another. You need to find a way to differentiate yourself, and often it is your personality and your values that are going to differentiate you. So it's really important to showcase those on social media, where you can reach the local community so easily. These local Facebook groups, they're a minefield for it's an absolute goldmine in those Facebook groups to connect with people within the local community. And what I love doing in these Facebook groups as well, my husband thinks I'm mad because I'm always looking at people's comments in groups. And the reason is because it's great research, great market research. I've seen a post recently where it said, and this one for some reason particularly jumped out at me. It said, I'm looking for a great dentist. I've got a 4-year-old that's a bit anxious about it. Please, give me some recommendations. It was like a 2-sentence post. And there was hundreds of comments, right? in this post. And what it allowed you to do is to go through all those comments and figure out why parents are recommending certain dental practices because of how great they are with kids. One of them was, they've got a fish tank. The kids love going to see the fish tank. Is that practice actually posting pictures of the fish tank on social media to help other parents know that they have a fish tank? And, likewise, there were comments about they're great with kids. They've got their own kids. And whilst, I'm not an advocate of showing faces of our kids, there are ways that we can give impressions that, we've got kids and therefore we understand, what it's potentially like to be dealing with kids that have, high emotions. So it goes through all of those, there were posts, the kids love to get the goodie bag afterwards, they go there just for that. So are we posting about the goodie bags that we're giving to the kids when they leave the practice? So it gives you a lot of ideas about what to post. And these kinds of posts are not, these are the service that we're offering, these are the features and benefits of our practice. These posts are serving people's pain points. So people's pain points, parents' pain points is, my kid's going to be really anxious, right? When they go to the dentist, they're going to cry. This is going to be difficult for me as a parent. And that is what they are thinking, feeling, and doing. So we need to be clever about that in our social media strategy and generally our marketing strategy as well, not just social media. We need to play into those pain points because that's what's going to help people make those decisions. People are making decisions on their emotions, not necessarily on their, factual content about things. So play on those emotions.
I like that. So you're talking more about this is the experience you will have here rather than these are the services you could tap into by coming along to us.
Absolutely. People don't want services. People want you to solve their problems. That is it.
Yeah,
if we can help people understand that we can solve their problems in this way, we can solve your problem of your child being really anxious because we've got a TV on the roof, we've got fish that they will love to come and see, they get a goodie bag, we can give them a ride on the chair, all of those kinds of things. You're actually solving the parent's problem. And you're getting in deeper to that parent guilt of, my child hasn't been to the dentist and I feel guilty about that, but I've also got this other conflicting concern about how they're going to react, behave, and all of that kind of stuff while they're in there. So if you can get deep on those emotional pain points, that is where you're going to make a lot of impact. And you're going to connect with a lot of people within your local community. And, from the opposite end of the spectrum, if you're a practice that, concentrates on aesthetics and cosmetic dentistry, then there are a different set of pain points for those people. So we need to tap into exactly what they are. And it might be, you want to look great for your wedding and getting your teeth done as part of that. It's going into those more emotional pain points that is just understanding your patients, the way they think, the way they feel, the way they make decisions, and what's going on internally for them, because that's the way you're going to resonate with people, very much so.
Yeah, fantastic. And when you're looking at that other end of the spectrum as well, I saw a forum that were talking about the dentistry and how it rolls out within the community. And one of the strong elements that has come through, or that came through during that program, was the fear of judgment. So I am now in my 50s, 60s, 70s. I've neglected my teeth for a period of time, but I'm not going along because I know that I'll be judged. And so you can also communicate how you love as a practice to take people from, a non-functional or unaesthetic or painful mouth and transforming them and providing that lovely journey for people as well. So they start to think, they, as you say, that's touching into my pain point. They're assuring me I won't be judged when I come in here. That's the place I'm going to end up going.
Absolutely. I think that's a great example of producing content that is going to tap into them. And remember, I know a lot of practice owners and dentists will feel a bit of anxiety about putting themselves out there on social media, because it is, you feel like people are going to judge you. But what I can tell you is that we are our own worst enemies in that regard. We judge ourselves on much higher standards than what other people will do. So just, try and ignore that for starters. But the second point is that there are people in the local community that need you. There are people that have those guilty feelings of not having gone to the dentist, that are afraid of being judged. If you can reach out to them in your communication on social media and be able to create content that connects with them to feel like they trust you enough to be able to make that appointment to come and see you, and then you can essentially change their health and the aesthetics for the better, isn't that worth just putting in a little bit of effort to focus on your social media strategy to be able to do that? And
you can brainstorm some of these ideas with your team members. How this is the communication that we want, or this is what we want to communicate to our potential new patients coming through. Who else has ideas, or what have you seen other dental practices do if they've been followed on social media? Let's brainstorm ideas on content.
Yep. Absolutely. And as many hands make light work. It's much better to get the team involved and be able to do that. But it might just be you might ask all the dentists and hygienists. What questions are you being asked? What do you feel like people are afraid of when they come here? And try and tap into some of that, because your patients best. You're talking to them every day. You understand them, So if we can just match our marketing efforts to our target audience's needs and solving their problems, that is where you're going to really create a lot of cut through, and you'll reach those people within the local community. So we don't need to go for the vanity metrics on social media. It's not about how many people are following the page or anything like that. It's about how many people you can connect with your content. And I'd rather have, a couple of hundred people on my page that are engaged and interested in what we're talking about than thousands of people that are really not engaged, and it's not worthwhile to be there. And the social media algorithms will pick up on that as well. So you want to make sure that, people who are following your page really are interested in your page. So if you're kind of trying to look at any of these kind of dirty tactics to go and get more followers and those types of things, don't go for the vanity metrics. We don't need that. We just need genuine people within the local community that are potential patients of yours to follow your page.
Nice. And just to touch on as well, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, all the things. Where do we place our attention? Can it just be one, or would we need to go through multiple different applications?
So I spend a lot of time monitoring social media platforms, who the target audiences are, how many users there are, active users of those platforms. Currently, Facebook is still double the number of active users of pretty much any other platform in Australia at the moment. So active users. And when I say active users, that means that they need to have logged into their account at least once a month. So Facebook is still a very powerful channel, and Facebook groups particularly are an absolute goldmine if you can tap into those Facebook groups. And then we have Instagram. So Instagram's got about 9 million active Australian users at the moment. It has a very different target audience. Predominantly Instagram in the past has been more of a visual platform. So if you're, not a practice that's going to be taking a lot of photos, then you'll really struggle to get good content for Instagram. Although Instagram have recently announced that Instagram are virtually in direct competition with TikTok, and they have announced that they will be placing more of an emphasis on video content on the Instagram platform. So TikTok is growing. It's one that I'm watching. There's about 1 million TikTok users in Australia at the moment, and It is a different type of audience, though. The audience of TikTok users are generally a lot younger than the other platforms, and I'm still monitoring TikTok. I haven't yet seen it used well enough to get the results that we want. So, not just getting more fans on TikTok, we want to make sure that that's actually converting into people making appointments and coming into your practice. So that is one that I'm watching definitely. LinkedIn is a great platform still to be networking with colleagues, and showcasing what you do to a more kind of corporate audience in that regard. But in terms of answering your question, do I have to be across all channels? Absolutely not. You don't need to be across all channels. I do marketing every day and I'm not on every channel. My biggest channel is, two channels, LinkedIn and Facebook. I dabble in Instagram, and I'm not on the other platforms. So it is not, you can't physically do it. It is more than a full-time job to be on every single social media platform. My advice to you is to figure out where your local audience is and just focus on that platform or two platforms. So just keep it focused. You don't need to be all things to all people. And we need to relate that back to, the old days of magazine advertising, for example. You're not going to advertise in every single magazine that's there. So, you come back and you bring that back to just where are your people, your potential patient audience, and focus on those channels.
That's made me feel so good. I have felt like I've failed my own business, just not from a dental practice perspective, but my business, Julie Parker Practice Success, because I'm not on TikTok or Instagram and I can't even face it. But I'm just on Facebook and LinkedIn. And the Facebook, from that community sense, where there are so many ways of promoting one's practice. And one of those ways is, of course, the internet, and you're appealing to everyone in the world. And then you can bring it all the way down to a local sporting ground banner signage where it brings it right down local. So do think local. And the Facebook is great because you've got those Facebook communities that you can participate in. Because even the staff can participate in helping answer any dental related questions without sounding promo-y or advertising at all. If someone says, I've got a child that needs to go to a dentist, does anybody have a good practice to go to? Someone could easily say, you should go to a practice that does have a particular child focus to it. There's I personally work for one, but I know there's others in the area as well. So you could make it very conversational and helpful and likable. And if you're participating in that sense, or even just answering actual clinical questions if the dentists are online, is that a good way to participate in communities as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And it is, it's just, people are just looking for genuine recommendations. So it's one of those things that those social media groups are powerful. And I'll tell you something that happened in those groups. Once one or two of your patient advocates, so those patients that just, love your services so much they're going to shout your names from the rooftops, once they know that you're in those groups, they will start to talk about your practice because they want you to see that they are advocating for your practice. So, and that's a great thing, I had a screenshot sent to me from one of my clients this morning where another person commented on a post that just completely proved the point that they were saying. So this conversation was amongst two different people and he didn't need to get involved. He said, look, this is beautiful. So, someone's just answered genuinely all those questions for me. I didn't even have to get involved in that discussion. So, and that's what happens on social media. And people will, they value the authenticity of the referral on those social media platforms. I work with a lot of specialists as well. I was talking to a specialist and he said, I spent, years going through my training. I've done thousands of different different patients and services and all of that kind of stuff. And he said, why is it that people will take the advice of a stranger that they've never met on social media over something that I'm telling them? And I said, well, that's really simple. That firstly, you're not on social media. So that is one of the first problems. But secondly, the authentic recommendation of a complete stranger, they value more than all of your training and expertise. Really sorry about that.
How disappointing. How disheartening.
But have the conversations on social media. Meet people where they're at. Have those conversations. Educate them. Help them. That is where you're going to reverse that issue, because you will become that trusted advisor, that trusted healthcare leader within your community. So yeah, make sure you do that. Definitely have those discussions on social media and be there and be present. And the other thing that we should always cover off on when we're talking about social media and marketing in general is obviously the APRA guidelines are there for a reason, and it is super important to be mindful of compliance of those guidelines on social media, and to also be really mindful of patient privacy on social media. So I always bring up a common thing that can potentially happen. You can see how this may happen in your practice. Let's just say your dental practice and Chris Hemsworth walks in, right? Everybody's quite starstruck, and somebody picks up their mobile phone and snaps that shot of them, waiting in the patient waiting area, and then they want to kind of tell their friends because it's the most exciting thing that's happened all day, and they post that on social media. That is obviously a breach of privacy, and you cannot do that. So it's worth certainly training your staff, anyone who has who is working on your social media accounts, just to be super aware of those privacy issues that can come up, and also the APRA guidelines to make sure that everything that you're doing from a social media perspective is compliant. The reality is, if somebody's going to audit you, they're going to look at your website and social media, because you can do that from a desk somewhere. So that is one of the easiest places to go and look for compliance. So super important.
That is super important. And it brings it back to that point that you were mentioning before. It's all about the relationships and the customer experience that you're providing, because that's the most compelling thing for your potential new patients. But it's also completely compliant with APRA as well. You're not reassuring patients out there, if you get this treatment, this is what your result will be. What you're saying is, if you come here, it'll be really easy to park. If you come here, you'll have top customer service. We'll help you feel very comfortable in the surgery. And so it lends itself beautifully to what you've been describing as great content for your social media.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, that kind of content, you'd be hard pressed to breach a guideline using that kind of content. And it's what people care about. That's what they care about, is easy parking and, accessibility, and do you run on time? We all try to, but you've got to respect your customers' time. And the interesting thing about millennials is, don't keep them waiting. They will be writing a negative Google review while you're waiting, while you're keeping them waiting. So it's super important not to keep the millennials waiting, for sure.
Beautiful. And that's as an example, that's one thing that people do care a lot about, but you never see posts about that on dental practice pages. And so that's one of those things too. And just before I go into how marketing practices, the business, can actually work with dental practices, we think that we need to come up with brand new posts and content all the time and never reuse it. But because there is a transient element to the content, if you've posted something 6 months ago and posted again today, it will look and appear like fresh content. They won't remember you've posted it 6 months ago.
So generally the lifespan of social media posts is about 48 hours. So you could actually post that once a month about your parking, great parking, the hours that you're opened, all of that content can be repeated pretty regularly. People don't remember it. No, not at all. I mean, don't just kind of hit repeat on everything and freshen it up with what I would call posts that are kind of opportunistic posts. So if Mrs. Jones comes to your practice and had a great experience and she sends you a card afterwards, take a snap of that, the front of that card and post that kind of stuff on social media. But most of your content can be absolutely repurposed. And even if you want to freshen it up with just doing it in a different way, then it's the same topic. Again, coming back to that, the marketing rule of people need to see your message over and over and over again before it sinks in to their minds. So we shouldn't be thinking about new and different content that we have to be posting all the time. We should be repeating our messages.
Nice. So how do you work with dental practices if there are practices out there that think, gosh, we don't do social media marketing effectively enough, we need to jump into that pool, and they wanted to work with you? What does that look like?
Yeah, sure. So I've got a social media program called Social Media Marketing Essentials. It is specifically created for dentists, and there is a big component of compliance within that program as well. And people can just reach out to me at info@marketingpractices.com.au, and I can help get them access to that. It's an 8-week course altogether, completely online, and I'm really hands-on with helping and answering questions and getting into social media accounts, setting them up even if you don't have one. We can do all of that within the program as well.
Oh, that is absolutely fantastic. And the online learning space, we've been forced into doing a whole bunch more online than what we've been doing in the past, but there's enormous benefit around that. We have got such quick and immediate access to such useful information as businesses now. It's really tremendous. So well done getting stuff online. And you have also got the Marketing Incubation Hub that's going on as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So the Marketing Incubation Hub is for new practice owners or aspiring practice owners. And I work with those practice owners about 6 to 12 months out before they launch their practice and set up all of their marketing assets, take care of all of the marketing elements of launching that practice, right through to a pre-launch runway where we warm up our audience and bring them along that journey with us that we were talking about, and making sure that when we launch, you have a really strong pipeline of new patients ready to make appointments as soon as your appointment books are opened.
That is so powerful. I was recently speaking to somebody who has just opened their practice up 3 weeks ago, and, just that sense of well-being, of calm that it can generate when you've got people already either scheduling in or getting onto that wait list. That is, because that's the fear, isn't it? How long am I going to be able to function this dental practice at startup from scratch before I break even? Who knows when the break even point is going to be? It could be in 6 months. It could be in 1.5 years. I don't know if I've got the funds to be able to carry me through. So doing that work around the marketing and getting a baseline patient base from the very start is extraordinarily powerful. And we often think that once I open the doors, that's when I'll start the activity around the marketing, but it's the other way around, isn't it?
You've missed the time frame, unfortunately, and it is harder for you if you do it at that point. It's actually a lot easier if you start your marketing journey 6 to 12 months in advance of when that practice is going to be open, in terms of getting your marketing strategy right, building all of your brand assets, your marketing foundations, getting all of your assets set up, your websites, your social media accounts, optimizing all of those. If you can do all of that work well in advance of opening, then you can focus on your pre-launch runway of really going out and promoting the practice before it opens. You will have a much easier ride. You've missed a great opportunity. You get one chance to launch this practice. You can either do it in a really soft way but it's not going to serve you for the purposes of cash flow and getting patients in and starting to get your systems up and running and all of those kinds of things. You need to be doing that well in advance. Absolutely.
And as a practice consultant, I've been a practice consultant for about 10 years. Before that, I owned my own dental practice for 10 years. And before that, I'd been working as a dental assistant and et cetera. But especially when I was a dental practice owner, as a consultant, I can see new startups, their go-to place to start their patient base is, can I become a preferred provider for some of the health funds and get this instant flow of new patients coming through? When I was a practice owner, I couldn't have imagined a situation where I thought it was a good step to hand control over my fee list to a large section of my patient base to an external entity whose agenda is to keep it as low as possible. You really are putting yourself on the back foot in many ways, and we won't go into all of those many ways within this particular episode. So as a consultant, I've seen this, and my advice would always be, if you are starting up from scratch, you are far better tapping into resources such as yourself, Michelle, rather than going down the preferred provider route. Once you're on that route, it presents its own challenges, and it's difficult to jump off that route when you recognize, gosh, this isn't the pathway forward for a really strong, viable practice. You want to be able to tap into the people that you are designing your whole service around. You want to be able to attract a client base that's coming in that are not going to be quibbling over prices and won't just jump ship the minute your prices change if you decide to go off preferred provider. And you really want to develop a strong reputation for being the dental practice in your community that people want to be striving towards, and jumping ship from other practices to come to you because you've become so good at communicating. This is the experience that we're going to provide for you here.
Absolutely. I think it's so important. And, often looking at that whole pricing issue, particularly when you're starting out, you kind of feel afraid to charge the prices that you are worth, because you think, people aren't going to pay. There's always going to be people that pay for great service. Always. And there'll always be bargain basement shoppers. So you just need to choose which one you want in your practice and match your marketing efforts towards that. I would even be really hesitant if you really didn't want to go for that kind of bargain basement type of patient, to offer like an initial promotion to open the practice, to celebrate the opening. I would just charge the prices that you're worth, because if you want to attract patients that are going to shop around, they're not going to stay with you. They're going to keep shopping around. So it's super important to think about who it is you want to target and be confident in the service that you're providing, based around the prices that you're charging. So yeah, it's one of those things that
it is really setting yourself for success from day one, isn't it?
Absolutely. And often we don't have the confidence at that point in time, but you've got to move past those feelings and be confident in what you offer, and get out there and start connecting with the local community, particularly on social media. That'll get you there.
Well, what a nice way to round off the episode. The social media will get you there. It's a wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much for all of your advice in this space, and all of the links to access you, Michelle, are going to be in the show notes. So if anybody does want to work with you, what's the very first best step for them to take?
Yeah, sure. Just email me at info@marketingpractices.com.au, or just go onto my website, marketingpractices.com.au, or you can find me on Facebook predominantly, LinkedIn, yes, Instagram sometimes.
You're good. Well, thank you so much, and have a fantastic day.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, then you should come along and join the club. The club is a whole library of lunch and learns, with new lunch and learns being produced all the time, that help your dental team gain greater success in your systems, in your team behaviours, in your patient management, in your patient engagement, in their treatment plans. They are usually around half an hour in length. And so team members can sit down, be paid for their lunch break, eat lunch while they're being inspired and delivered all of these insights and strategies that can be implemented so you all achieve greater levels of success. Also, Amina and I, my buddy from Dental Management Expertise, have a company, Dental Business Mastery, together. And our flagship online 1-year course for dental practice managers and dental practice owners to learn how to very successfully manage your dental practice is available. Head over to dentalbusinessmastery.com.au to find out more information, and has information about any other courses that we've got available. Also, make sure you do jump onto my website, julieparkerpracticesuccess.com.au, and you will see a whole load of free information. There are articles, the blog, downloads, templates, a whole load of things that are designed to help you overcome any specific challenge that you've got going on in your practice at the moment. If you have any suggestions of topics or guests that I can have on the podcast, please let me know. Thanks for listening.